Autonomy and Sage back at it again. And Autonomy, good to, as always, good to have you in the company tonight, my brother.
Thank you, brother. I'm happy to be here.
Now we're gonna slide into part 2 of this religion thing we started last week. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm talking to you people. This information here comes from the root of every situation and problem that Nubian people are dealing with. We talk about religion. We're going to start off on religion. And man, I'm telling you, last week, we dove into this thing pretty heavily, and we might as well continue on this front. We talked about the mega minister who came out and said that he was wrong on tithes. And my question to him is, if you're wrong on tithes, what else could you be wrong on? The youth of America, Autonomy, are asking questions. They're not as gullible as our generation. And the questions that they're asking, and you will follow up on this because you're an authority on this religion subject, I know that. But they want to know, if your religion works, why are you so unhappy? If your religion works, why are Nubian people on the bottom as they were 600 years ago? If your religion works, why is the world for Nubian people as it has been? They're asking these questions, and they're not getting the answers to these questions.
Yeah, well, yeah, this, like you said, this new generation, they're not as gullible, and they're looking at things, they're looking at, they don't have opportunities, and they see all these mega churches and they see all these churches in the community, but they see no value coming out of the churches. They see no progression coming from the churches. They see ministers driving in nice cars, but they see the members of these churches walking, catching buses, some even driving little buckets here to and fro, and there's some in nice cars. But even when you look at the church members as they leave these churches, you can see in their faces that they're hungry, that they're confused, and that they don't know what to do with themselves, right? And the young people, you can't fool young people, because the young people, they from what they say, they from Missouri. You got to show me, right?
Yes.
And say your word and deed should be in harmony, and so they're not in the churches. The men are not in the churches. The young people are not in the churches. And who are in the churches is the elders, is mostly women, right? Because the pastors, they cater to the egos of the women, and they say, oh, you have to be equally yoked, don't date no man if he's not a man of God, right?
That's true. There's no question about that.
Right. So he keeps these women to himself. It's almost like a pimp. A pimp, he has women that give him money, right?
Yeah.
Pimps,
yeah.
they drive nice cars, they dress nice, they got the gift of gab, just like the preacher, right? And it's a stark resemblance between a preacher and a pastor.
You're gonna make a whole lot of people mad with that one.
Well, I gotta keep it real. I know it says, but we gotta take our medicine, baby. Really, So my grandfather told me, he said, the only difference, my grandfather was a rebel, right? He said, the only difference between a preacher and a pimp, he said a pimp will put on a condom. He will wear a condom. That's the only difference. But look at the similarity. Look at the similarity. Don't the pimps, they women give him money, right?
Yes.
And don't the preacher get money from mostly women, right?
Yes, indeed. Come on now.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's a glaring resemblance, right? But let me start with this here. But you want to comment on something, brother, before I look at my
No,
notes right here?
I like where you're going because obviously we think this religion thing has been keeping us behind the eight ball, if you will, eight ball. But it's a huge thing when you can consider that we are waiting for something from the heavens to change our situation. And we've been waiting for something from the heavens for decades, for centuries, and we are still on the bottom. My question to religious people, I don't argue with you, but my question to you is this. If what you believe is real, our situation as a people should have changed a long time ago. Because, come on, if I'm a dad and I have access to everything, I'm a father. I'm not going to deny my kids anything. I'm not going to come to them if I own Colonel Sanders. My kids are hungry and I come to the house with a biscuit meal for the family. It's not going to cut the cake. So if we talk about God's ability to do the things that God is supposed to be able to do, this is the world that he supposedly created. How would he allow Nubian people to be treated in slavery, post-slavery, even today, the way we've been treated after 400, 500, 600 years? One has to answer that question. And if one has no answer to that question, one must challenge the thing they believe.
Absolutely. Yeah. See, the thing about Black folks is this. We let's look at Genesis 6, chapter 6, verse 6, right? It says that God said, I'm sorry for making the world, for making man and the world, right? And he grieved in his heart, right? This passage is showing that God made a mistake, right? The all-powerful, all-knowing, omniscient made a mistake when he said, I'm sorry. If you apologize and say you're sorry, that means you made a mistake. And Christians, you can look in the Bible, it says in Genesis 6:6, he was sad and he grieved in his heart. Here is a God with emotions, right? Here is a God that also is a jealous God, right? But how could a supreme being be a jealous God, being that jealousy is the emotion of insecurity, right? The all-powerful is insecure. He says, I'm a jealous God and have no other God before me. That's what the scriptures say, right? But who is Jesus then if he said, have no other God before me? But they said, well, Jesus is God's son. But let's look at that. Hold your hats. Button up your seatbelt, right? A free thinker. I'm a free thinker, right?
And get your wallet out.
Yeah, I'm a free thinker. So it said God had a son, right? And then God chooses another man's wife, right? Mary, to have his child, right? And adultery, but at the same time in the Ten Commandments, it said, thou should not commit adultery, right? And God creates the act of adultery when he chooses another man's wife to have his son, right? And this son just so happened to be of one particular race, right? The only begotten son. Check out the language. We saw only all through the South and the North with the whites only, blacks only sign, right? So only should be something that we should be very leery of as Black folk when we see the word only. Only, once again, implies superiority and exclusion. But at the same time, God so loved the world and whosoever, which is inclusive, yet in that very sentence it says, or statement it says, the only begotten son, right? But that only begotten is actually the very root of racism. is also the projection of white divinity, right? So whiteness becomes a marketing ploy, right? It is a marketing ploy because you can find in the sale of everything that enhances whiteness with the whitening, skin lightening creams, bleaching your skin,
Mhm.
you know, the hot comb, putting the dye in your hair for blonde hair in different colors and shades, trying to emulate the divine or the universal model of humanity being the Christ figure, right? And then you get the stories with Disney, with Snow White. And then the story in the Bible that says, when you go to heaven, you'll be washed as white as snow, right? And then you also have the story of Snow White, where she looks in the mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all, right? And it's Snow White, right? So all this great masterful marketing ploy tied into religion, tied into the universal model of humanity, the Christ figure, right? This this blonde hair, this fair skin, then whiteness become this special thing, right? And if you're light skinned, you're beautiful. And if you're white, you're beautiful than people who are dark skinned, right? And once again, even the Asian community affected by this standard of beauty, this whiteness, now they're spending thousands of dollars trying to round out their eyes and look more European than Asian, right? So this divinity, this white divinity, this only begotten Son of God is actually, in reality, when you look at it, it's the projection of white divinity and projected in the marketing of whiteness through the modeling system. Then they got the models now. Now the light-skinned models get all the jobs, and the dark-skinned girls, they only get few jobs, right? So whiteness is projected as the standard, the universal model, the perfect man who came as the Christ, born in the womb of Mary, a Jewish woman. And from the chosen one, then comes the chosen people. It's all a game. And we got to look through this and understand what it is.
When you see, when I was introduced to the church, and millions of you people that are out there listening, you have been introduced to the church as you were kids. You saw the first picture of Jesus being a white man, fair skinned with long blonde hair. And so even today, when you close your eyes and the name Jesus comes up, you see that same picture. Now they say Jesus is in the image of God. And if Jesus is white, then God is white. And if Jesus and God are white and you praise them, then obviously you're going to praise who looks like them. And when you look at our situation, I mean, you gotta look at this thing for what it is. This is real. And we've got more Black churches in America than we need. I asked a friend of mine, I said, we have a lot of churches. I said, but if you only had the Bible and no churches, 0 churches, would that be enough? He said, yes. So what you're saying is we don't need these churches. If you really believe what's in that book that you carry. But let me ask you a question. Who gave you the book? Because when our people, Nubian people came from Africa, Christianity was not around. Christianity was not a big thing in Africa. So we didn't get to Christianity until we got to America. Then 90% of us became Christians. We got the Bible from the white man. We got Jesus from the white man. And so we adapted all these things, and now we're born again Christians. And look at us. We eat the wrong foods. We watch movies we have no business watching. We're on TV looking as wild as you can get. We have no culture, and we're all over the place. But yet we love some Jesus. To me, I mean, it doesn't add up. So I started to ask questions, which is a lot of my Christian friends don't. When you pin them down to get really serious about this thing, I want you people to listen to this, because those of you that are believers in this fairy tale, I want you to look at it for what it is and where we are today. We talk about the devil. Now, what God is going to allow the devil to run around willy-nilly cursing all his people for centuries? What God is going to allow some devil to curse his people for centuries? And he made everything. And he's going to allow some devil to run around raging havoc, pillaging everywhere. That didn't make sense to me, Autonomy. So I said, wait a minute, now let me dig a little deeper. Let me take this Bible and dig a little deeper. White man has only been here for 50,000 years. How old is the world? Billions of years. So how much information could he possibly have on what this thing is all about? So we've just accepted something that we got from white America. When we got here, we've accepted it. And now this generation the new generation is saying we have questions. So Christian people, don't get mad when your kids get a little upset. They don't understand your belief. Don't get mad, because they have questions and they want answers to those questions, and they want more answers than just believe. Have faith. So we've been having faith and believing for 500 years, and we're still at the bottom of the totem pole. That doesn't make sense. Autonomy.
Yeah, absolutely. None of it makes sense. Now look at this. Here's another statement they make in the religious discourse, right? Faith is evidence in things unseen. Listen to that. Listen to that. Faith is evidence in things unseen. How do you have evidence in things unseen, right? Evidence from the Latin word vid means to see, right? So faith have evidence in things unseen. How do you have evidence in things that you can't see? You know, and these terms and this discourse has been going on for years and years and years, and people don't really analyze language, right? They just accept it because that's all they ever heard. That's what their grandparents passed on to them. So we are bound by words, which words is actually spells, right?
Right.
That's why when you put letters together, they call it spelling, because words are spells if you don't know the history and cultural and political intentions behind language, right? The King's English, right? Because it's language which creates the consciousness of man. It speaks to man from a bias and a partial perspective. The Bible, a book that's supposedly the word of God, but yet is written in the third person and not the first person. Any credibility at the very first sentence of the Bible, it should state, if it is the word of God, it should say, in the beginning, I. But it's not written in the first person, it's written in the third person. Someone else is telling a story. Who is telling the story of when the beginning began? That is so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous to think that someone that maybe God had a secretary that was taking notes while he was creating the world, and they was writing everything down while he was doing what he was doing. You know, and even the concept of in the beginning is ridiculous, right? So what was God doing before he created the world, right? Was he just floating around in nothingness, right? And then one day he said, oh, well, okay, I'm gonna create the world, right? and I'm gonna do it. And when I create the world, I'm gonna pass the message on and then have Moses. They say Moses wrote the first five books of the Bible, and yet how did he write about his own death? It's just ridiculous. And then you get the story of Adam and Eve, right? They're supposed to be the first two people, and yet they had sons, and their sons, Adam and Eve's sons, found wives. Where did the wives come from? It's just ridiculous,
What did
man.
Moses write with, though? If he was writing, what did he have pencils, pens? I mean, what did he write with?
I don't know. Maybe he had a cell phone. It's incredible, man, how these stories are still held on with such fervor, right? People are just attracted to these stories, man, and they just that, stories, right? Just stories and propositions and suppositions defined by people who name and define things. Now check this out. Check this out. Adam was given the power to name things. And when he was given the power to name things, it gave him dominion, or another word for domination, right? To dominate. Dominion, dominate, same word, derived from the same word. So whoever names and defines things places themselves in position of power. Whoever controls the printing press, whoever controls the written word, the media and magazines, they create the popular mind, right? The collective mind of the masses, right? And that's the situation that people are in who are believers. See, people who rule the world, they don't base their understanding of the world by believing, right? They know. Believers will always be dominated by people who know. Now let's look at the word belief. The root meaning of belief is belai. Belai means a false representation of a fact or reality, right? And a belief is defined in the dictionary as a noun. But a belief is not a person, place, or thing. A noun is a person, place, or thing. So how is belief defined as a noun and it's not a person, place, or thing? The same thing with faith. Faith is defined as a noun, but it's not a person, place, or thing. So these words are actually misspellings or misdefinitions and basically lies, right? But people don't want to look at the language, right? They just want to believe. They want to be they want to be led by
There
people
we go.
who can speak so well. And they say the preachers got the gift of gab, just like the pimps got the gift of gab to seduce women and make them give up their money. So that's the situation when we are detached from reality because we do not understand language and how language creates and manipulates consciousness.
My goodness. Well said. I looked up the word religious indoctrination. That word indoctrination, I was very fascinated by it. I'm going to read this to you. Why are people indoctrinated to religion, to whatever? Indoctrination and propaganda train us for obedience and conformity. They discourage us from thinking differently or creatively, particularly in dealing with new problems and challenges we face. Well, let me read that again. When we are indoctrinated, whether it's religion, in this case it's religion, it is propaganda to train us for obedience and conformity. They discourage us from thinking differently or creatively, particularly in dealing with new problems and facing challenges, everyday challenges. The problem, Nubian people, is this. We're in a serious situation. America is facing some serious challenges. We have incredible trillions of dollars worth of debt. We have Russia and China who are flexing their muscles and they want to be invited to the party. The dollar dominance is over. We have a situation here in this country where the moral fiber of this country has never been good. 100% of the people who stormed the Capitol were Christians. So we've seen Christians do some of the incredible mischief that's ever been done in this country and around the world. So yeah, we're questioning our belief because our belief should have been able to bring more fruit to our people. And the autonomy and I talked about this last week. In 1920, so I found this hard to believe, but it's true. We had over 300,000 farmers. We owned more land than we own today in 2022. Let me say that again. We had more wealth. We owned more land in 1920. Research this if you want. Than we own in 2022. Now, we have churches on every block. We have believers filling up the pews. Bless you, brother. I mean, we have churches filling up the pews. And if our situation hasn't changed, can you understand why young people say, we don't want it? Because they're seeing the result of it. And the result has not brought the fruit that it should. So they're asking questions. My kids are asking questions. Your kids are asking questions out there. And if they don't get the answers, they're not going to go to the churches that we fill up. So it's a key that we understand this thing. And what we want to do, now I'll turn it over to you, Autonomy. What we want to do is get people to ask questions. Nubian people, when we don't ask questions, we don't win. So anything in your life, I was told by my mom growing up, don't ask questions about this religion. Don't ask any questions. It's God's will. So when somebody died, we prayed for somebody and they died, or we prayed for something to happen and nothing happened, it was God's will. And so everything fell underneath that umbrella. We didn't ask questions. I wanted to, but I was told not to, just like many of you. And so today we can see why not asking questions has kept us in suspended animation, which is where we are now. Autonomy.
Exactly. Before religion came into the world, and people don't realize there was a time that the concept of religion was not in the world, right? But people say, what can you say? The Egyptians, they were religious and they had all these gods. Not true. Matter of fact, the Egyptians didn't even have a word for God, right? The word God comes from the Teutonic language, right? That's the ancient Germanic term, right? Teutonic. So the Egyptians, the people of early cultures before religion came in the world, they honored the trees, they honored the water, the rivers, the fish, the sun. They saw nature. Nature was the thing that they honored and revered. They never had one particular God that they say was this is God and this is the one and only God. Because when Europeans and missionaries went into Africa and tried to introduce the concept of one God to the Africans say, wow, what do you mean one power? All nature is many powers and nature expresses itself in many forms. Mm. But when the concept of a one God came, right? Every culture, every dominant culture wanted to say, okay, that this God, our God is the best God, right? And then the Christians say, no, our God is the best God. And the Arabs say, no, we got the best God, right? And then the Jews say, oh, we got the best God. If you don't believe if you don't love our God like we love him, then you're the enemy. So all these religious wars, right? Fighting over who has the true and only God, right? True and only God, right? So male chauvinist paternal societies promoting they're trying to force their God on the world, right? And the Crusaders came out of Europe with the cross on their shields, right? And the popes giving the battle cry to the Crusaders, God wills it, as they went out and murdered people in the name of God. And guess what? No self-respecting supreme being would even honor the name God. You know, you're like, wait, whoa, don't call me God. All the death and murder, in the name of God. So any supreme being, right, wouldn't honor or accept the title God. I could hang my hat on that, right?
Yes.
So this God concept, right? this power that these cultures, these particular dominant cultures wants to claim as, they go to war and say, may God bless America, oh God, oh Allah bless Iran, and all these other names that they have. Man, it's amazing. This God claim, the murder, all the killings and murder and exploitation of human beings in the name of God, right? Missionaries went into Africa and exploited and did all their things, and corruption and perversion, in the name of God. Now let's check this out. Who sat down? I would like to know who sat down and decided that the supreme being's name is God. What did they meet in a conference room somewhere? What is a private dungeon somewhere? Okay, what are we gonna name the supreme being? Well, let's say, I like God. Okay, let's use that. Because in the Bible, in these scriptures, no scripture said that God said, "My name is God." Right?
No.
Did anywhere in the Bible did God say, "My name is God"? Because in the Bible it said Moses went up to Mount Sinai and the God was a ball of fire like they have in the Ten Commandments, the dramatic scene with a fire, and Moses standing there. Moses, take off your shoes, you on holy ground. A bass baritone European voice, by the way.
Yes.
Take off
Heston.
you on holy ground, and said God, and then Moses said, "Hey God, I'm getting ready to go back to the Hebrews, the Jews are beating us down there. What should I tell the Jews when I go back? What your name is? What's your name? What name should I call you?" And God tells Moses, "I am that I am." Right? This is insane, man. Well, so somebody say, okay, we're gonna call the supreme being name God, right? And once again, God is come from the Teutonic language, because the Scandinavian countries, their word for God is Gud, spelled G-U-D, right? So it's just madness, man. It's just misinformation, and that the world is caught up in mythological stories and allegories and alleged stories and suppositions and propositions. Proposition mean to offer something for consideration. That's what the word proposition means. To offer something for consideration, right? So most people who are believers, they've been offered something of consideration to believe this and believe that, right? And faith, coming from the Portuguese word fatico, which means blind devotion, right? Faith, the root meaning of faith is blind devotion, as fetish and faith is actually the same word, if you understand language, right? So it's incredible, man, and that's why the world is in the mess that it's in. That's why the Christian countries are the most vicious. It was a Christian country that dropped an atomic bomb and killed thousands of people in Japan, right? It was the Crusaders who went into the islands and Espanol and Bartholomew de las Casas made his account of what the Spaniards did in the islands and wiped out the Arawaks, right? With the Bible in their hand and they swords made like the cross, right? Religion, man, the murder in the name of God, man, is incredible when you look at the history.
You look at the Christian people, and I mean, I told a friend of mine years ago, I said, you are a Christian because of where you live in America. You would be Muslim if you were born in the Middle East, or what they call the Middle East. Actually, that's Africa. So based on where you are in the geographic, in the United States or around the world, would determine what your faith is going to be. So you're a Christian because you're in America, and we were given that religion by white America. And so again, there's hundreds of religions out there. Christianity is one of them, one of the biggest ones now. But it was given to us when we got here. Our ancestors did not covet that religion in Africa. We got it when we got here. We got the Bible when we got here. We learned about Jesus when we got here. And we adapted over hundreds of years, and now it is part of our story. But our story is incomplete, and our situation here in America could never be worse. And if God exists for us, He is definitely either left us out for a reason or something else is a problem, because we have not benefited. Christians out there, you whatever religion you are, there's what you have, our situation, I'm trying to say something, our situation has not changed in 500 years. And we can't just say that Jesus is coming back to wipe away every one of our problems. Because if that's the case, he would have came back a long time ago. So again, our point is we want to talk to people who want answers. We want to talk to people who are not satisfied with what they see. If we can break this spell, then we can get to the business of building, of doing the things that we must do to become a better nation, to become a better people. But in order to get that done, this main area has to be figured out, because if we continue on this path, then we're going to be getting much more of what we've been getting. And that's the truth and nothing but the truth.